Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a monumental stack of sources. We're talking articles, intelligence reports, psychological profiles, and just plunging right in.
We really are.
We're going into one of the most brilliant, tragic, and frankly baffling sagas of modern terror. It's a series of incredibly sophisticated bombings that held the entire city of Tokyo hostage.
And this is the part that always gets me. It wasn't masterminded by some global terrorist network.
No.
It was two remarkably gifted, deeply scarred teenagers. They operated under this chilling moniker, Sphinx.
Yes, Sphinx. And that really sets the stage for this central mystery, Why would these young minds, and we are talking genius-level intellects here, use incredibly complex riddles and highly advanced explosives to hold an entire government hostage?
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to try and move past the chaos, the panic and the blinding light of the explosions, and really look at the core motivation behind those masks.
That's the why of it all.
Exactly. Our sources detail a plot so intricate, it almost defies belief. You've got these complex riddles, advanced chemical explosives, and then the theft of an atomic bomb prototype.
It sounds like fiction.
It really does. But the goal here for us, rooted in this hidden tragic history.
And their actions were, what? A plea.
A desperate, incredibly theatrical plea for justice.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's set the stage for you. The key figures, our protagonists, if you can call them that, are two boys. And they're defined only by the numbers they were given years ago.
9 and 12.
9, who operates under the name Kukoni, and 12, who goes by Hisami. And on the surface, they're just these distant, calculated high school transfer students.
Right, but beneath that very calm, very calculated facade, they are carrying the weight of a horrific secret. And it's all defined by their past in a mysterious, isolated laboratory.
That lab. That's the crucible, isn't it?
It's the defining crucible of their entire identities. They operate with a level of cold logic and technological sophistication that, it just shouldn't exist in teenagers.
They're products of a system.
A traumatic experimental system. And their whole existence in Tokyo is this one long, calculated act of rebellion against the powerful forces that created them. We have to synthesize this whole complex narrative for you, from that first infiltration of the nuclear facility all the way to the final confrontation.
Just to understand the scale of what they're trying to expose.
The sheer scale of the atrocity.
And it's so important to remember as we start that these aren't just, angry hackers or disaffected youth with a grudge.
Oh, no.
The moment we start this timeline, you see that their actions are cold, professional, and targeted. They're not just reacting. They were executing a plan that was clearly years in the making.
Strategic master plan.
So, part 1. The spark of rebellion and the first blast.
Let's do it.
Our journey begins 6 months before the first sirens start blaring in Tokyo. And the scene is it's utterly remote. A nuclear fuel facility buried deep within a snowy, isolated region.
This is the genesis. This is the first move on the board, and it immediately establishes the sheer scale of the operation 9 and 12 are capable of.
The sources describe an infiltration that really does border on cinematic.
It does. You see these two figures, and they're noticeably younger and smaller than they appear later on. And they're navigating this high-security manufacturing plant, a plant dedicated to producing huge quantities of plutonium.
And their infiltration is almost effortless.
Effortless is the word. It really suggests they were either trained for exactly this kind of scenario, or, maybe more chillingly, their enhanced cognitive abilities just render modern security systems trivial.
What stands out to me is the sheer audacity of it. They didn't just walk in. They engineered a staged police alarm miles away.
A diversion.
A perfect diversion, just to pull attention away long enough for them to enter the facility. And while 12 is off securing the objective, 9, he takes a moment.
He does. He writes 3 cryptic letters on the floor in the dust. V-O-N.
Even in their very first act, this huge act of global resource theft, they're leaving this calling card, a sign that foreshadows their final, really poignant message.
And the objective itself, this is what elevated it from just a simple theft to a major international incident. They didn't just steal raw materials.
No.
They specifically targeted and acquired a massive quantity of plutonium that, as we later find out from the intelligence briefs, is actually a clandestine atomic bomb prototype.
developed secretly by the Japanese government.
Exactly.
That just immediately raises the stakes to an impossible level. This isn't just a dirty bomb threat anymore. This is state-level weaponry being turned against the state itself.
The tension in that scene, from the reports, is palpable. You have
Yeah.
12 cornering the security guards, demanding access to an elevator, and he warns them if they refuse, he will fire his weapon at the plutonium itself.
And that's not just bravado, is it?
Oh, not at all. Firing a conventional round into unshielded plutonium could initiate a catastrophic non-nuclear explosion. We're talking massive radiation dispersal. It would guarantee devastation for miles around that facility.
So his willingness to risk that.
It just highlights their absolute, almost fanatical commitment to whatever their undisclosed objective is at this point.
So they escape, they have the prototype, and they leave behind nothing but the snow and that mysterious VON.
And then we fast forward.
6 months. And the conflict moves to the heart of Tokyo. 9 and 12 enroll as high school transfer students. They're blending in, or trying to, under the names Kokoni and Hisami, and they're maintaining that distant, calculated demeanor.
But Nine, who seems to be the colder, more detached strategist of the two, he notices something specific in the student body.
He notices Lisa.
He notices Lisa, and she is this isolated, very distressed figure in the narrative. She's relentlessly bullied by her classmates. You see her eating lunch alone.
And the situation at home is just awful. An emotionally abusive mother putting this intense, suffocating pressure on her.
And the sources are very clear on this. Nine immediately recognized a deep internal isolation in her eyes. It was something he knew.
It's more than just noticing, isn't it? He sees a reflection. He sees the exact same look of fear and isolation that defined the children trapped in that horrifying lab years ago.
That moment of recognition, it is pivotal. It gives you the first crack in the facade of their cold, calculated mission. It tells you that despite all their training, their genius, their clear path of destruction, they still harbor this profound human memory of shared pain.
Of vulnerability.
Exactly. Lisa is, in a way, a chance for them to intervene, to save a life they couldn't save back at the facility.
And that observation ties directly, immediately, into their very first public act of terror. The setting is a huge government building in Tokyo, a symbol of power and bureaucracy.
And they manipulate a simple high school trip to this building into the perfect target scenario. The plan is surgically precise.
Cut the main power grid for exactly 30 minutes. Plunge a huge part of the city into darkness, right in the middle of the day.
And that duration, 30 minutes, it's critical. It's long enough to cause massive panic and infrastructural disruption, but it's short enough to avoid, a total societal collapse.
Which reinforces the idea that their goal was disruption and exposure, not permanent destruction.
It was always about the message.
So 12 is the one who handles planting the explosives. And the juxtaposition here is just. It's deeply unsettling. He's using his favorite toys.
Childish, innocent objects.
Teddy bears, model robots. And he's using them to conceal these deadly, structurally targeted explosive devices throughout the building.
What?
The image of a teddy bear housing something that can level steel. It says everything about their stolen innocence.
But even this highly calculated plan hits a severe snag.
Lisa.
Lisa, overwhelmed by the bullying, she'd retreated to a bathroom, just wishing she could disappear. And she stumbles upon 12 during the final moments of his operation, catches him completely off guard.
And this is where 12 makes this fateful decision. It's cruel in the moment, absolutely.
In the context of terrorism, it's horrific.
But it's ultimately redemptive for Lisa. Instead of silencing her, or just ignoring her and risking exposure, he hands her the final bomb. It's still disguised as a toy.
And he compels her to hold on to it until he returns.
He essentially forces her into the conspiracy. The source material even notes he tells her, keep this so you won't be alone.
That one act simultaneously saves her from the blast by keeping her in a safe spot he designated, and yet, it completely implicates her in an act of mass terror.
It's a profound moment. It's 12 forcing 9 to confront their shared past by saving this vulnerable person, a chance they were denied with the other 24 children.
The moment the power flickers back on, 9, who's monitoring everything from a remote location, triggers the bombs. And this is where we really need to spend some time on the technical brilliance that just completely baffled the initial investigators.
Because the material they used wasn't some, off-the-shelf explosive.
Exactly. The government building was deliberately constructed to resist terror attacks. The sources indicate the walls were 4 times thicker than standard construction. A typical dynamite or TNT charge wouldn't have achieved structural collapse.
The key was their choice of chemical warfare.
Thermite.
which isn't technically an explosive, right? It's a pyrotechnic composition, usually a powder, a mix of iron oxide and aluminum.
Correct. But when you ignite it, this specific reaction generates incredible thermal energy. We are talking temperatures soaring up to 3,000 degrees Celsius. That's over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
And that extreme heat is hot enough to melt solid steel almost instantly.
So they engineered these bombs not to rely on concussive force, but on thermal destruction. They were melting the steel supports, causing a systematic structural collapse of multiple floors, gutting the building from the inside out with fire.
And here is the truly sinister stroke of genius, the crucial detail for you, the learner. When the fire alarms went off, the building's sprinkler system engaged. It released water.
But water doesn't extinguish thermite.
It intensifies the reaction.
They weaponized the standard safety countermeasure. The influx of water reacted violently with the superheated material, generating a massive secondary steam explosion that just maximized the damage. It ensured the collapse and demonstrated their advanced knowledge of chemistry.
It was a signature, a calculated demonstration of genius left for the world to see.
And in the middle of all this chaos, 12 escapes. He calls 9, tells him about Lisa's forced involvement.
So 9 has to shift from strategist to rescuer. He guides Lisa out with these precise, almost ridiculously specific steps. 15 steps forward, 23 to the right, 12 forward, all to help her conceal the device and escape the collapsing building.
The investigators later confirmed that this kind of detailed split-second guidance could only have come from someone with an almost architectural photographic memory of the building's complex blueprints.
So this first blast, it didn't just cause damage. It established 2 profound facts. The culprits are genius-level chemical experts with political aims.
And despite the danger, their initial target was the structure of power itself, not the innocent lives caught inside it. The stage was now set for the Sphinx.
Okay, part 2. The Sphinx's riddles and the counterintelligence.
And this is where the game really begins.
The aftermath of that first bombing immediately brings the 2 central opposing forces to the forefront. The chaos gives birth to this public identity, Sphinx.
Then the investigation brings the exiled genius detective Shibazaki back into the picture.
And Shibazaki is the perfect foil for them, isn't he? Well, our sources describe him as this brilliant investigator who was intentionally sidelined years ago.
Right, transferred to the archives, basically put in a basement to be forgotten.
All for daring to investigate a major political conspiracy tied to a powerful figure named Mamiya. So he has the insight, he has the integrity, but he's been marginalized. He's just sitting on years of forgotten police data.
While all this is happening, the Sphinx officially emerge. They post a public video, you see these 2 masked figures, and they're warning Tokyo of a darkness in the middle of the day and promising a new spark.
And Shibazaki, sitting in his dusty archive, he's the one who immediately connects the deliberate 30-minute blackout with the chilling theatrical language in that video. He knows, just instinctively, this isn't random.
Meanwhile, the official investigation, led by the, let's say, less imaginative Korehashi, is just struggling with the immediate pressure.
And then the Sphinx releases their very first riddle. The government rushes to judgment, and they just confirm Shibazaki's superior insight, which forces them to bring him back into the operational spotlight.
The riddle is a classic. Riddle 1. What walks on 2 legs in the beginning, then on 4, and finally on 3?
The Oedipus puzzle.
The Oedipus puzzle. And the government's process of solving this just highlights this massive bureaucratic failure under pressure. They hastily conclude the answer is man.
And they interpret the numbers chronologically based on the stages of life. 4 for a crawling infant, 2 for a walking adult, 3 for an old man with a cane.
So they get the number sequence 423, connect it to a prominent DNA research facility, and deploy massive anti-terror forces there. They're expecting this spectacular government victory.
And this is exactly where Shibazaki intervenes. He calls Korehashi, and he just patiently explains the massive error in context. This isn't some generic philosophical riddle.
He tells them the Sphinx is addressing the government, and it involves the hidden, darker, more sinister story of Oedipus, the tragic king.
Shibazaki's analysis here is, it's the crucial moment of this part of the deep dive. He realizes the riddle is designed to call out the government's secret crimes, its shame.
And he sees the correct, darker sequence is 243. Oedipus starts as a normal man, walking on 2 legs. Then, for his terrible unspoken crimes, incest, patricide, he falls to the level of an animal on all 4s.
And finally he becomes the blind, lame, exiled man with a cane, 3 points of contact.
The implication is just crystal clear. The Japanese government, through whatever it did, Project Athena, has committed a moral crime so severe it deserves to fall to the level of an animal.
And the target, of course, was never the DNA facility.
Not at all. Because the government prioritized that superficial interpretation, they left their own institution completely vulnerable. The intended target, which 9 successfully bombed, was a police station.
A direct and painful punishment for the government's shallow thinking, for their failure to see the deeper, darker truth the Sphinx was trying to show them.
So, having successfully humiliated the government once, the Sphinx just doubles down on the mythological context. This leads Shibazaki into an even deeper cultural dive with the second riddle.
What is the house next to the king's house?
And they layered in these subtle cultural clues this time. There was video footage of them clapping, which references religious reverence in Japan, and they explicitly mention limping, or walking with a cane, in their preamble.
Forcing the investigators back to the tragedy of Oedipus, whose name literally means swollen foot.
And Shibazaki's archive knowledge is just indispensable here. He connects the clues to Oedipus's cursed lineage, specifically the myth of his serpentine ancestors.
Which leads him to the Arakabaki Shrine in Nagano, a place famous for its ancient dragon tree. That was the house next to the king's house.
The location of the bomb was confirmed, an explosive planted inside a fire extinguisher at that very shrine. This time, the government moves with surgical speed, finally leveraging Shibazaki's insight effectively.
And they successfully defused the bomb. It turns out to be an ANFO, explosive ammonium nitrate, and fuel oil.
And this is a really significant moment. It is the first defeat for Sphinx. It forces 9 and 12 to realize they have a genuinely skilled analytical adversary in Shibazaki.
They're no longer playing a simple game of genius versus bureaucratic incompetence.
Exactly, and that recognition of a worthy opponent brings us to riddle 3, the red serpent. The clue was incredibly terse. Where was FIZ 5889 punished?
The Sphinx is now actively testing Shibazaki's ability to pull obscure information from those dusty archives he was exiled to.
To link FIZ 5889 to a physical location, Shibazaki had to scour decades-old localized police case files. He found a connection to a specific, almost forgotten case concerning high school students.
And they were subjected to excessive running, a grueling, exhausting, physical punishment.
He connects that ordeal to the mythical serpent cursed to run forever, the red serpent. This is the logical bridge he makes. What is the only long-running red object tied to a political organization head in the city?
The answer: the Shudo Red train line. And the target was the local organization head tied to that specific line. So 9 sets the operation in motion, ready to remotely detonate the bombs planted along the route.
But just as he attempts the remote detonation, the unimaginable happens. An unknown, highly sophisticated electronic force jams their signal.
And not just localized jamming. This was a complete signal nullification across a wide area of the city.
9. The supreme technologist realizes instantly that they are now facing a new, skilled, and powerful technological adversary who has clearly anticipated and countered their every move.
The technological leap represented by that jamming it's massive. It implies resources, intelligence, and coordination far beyond the local police.
And this forced a crisis. 12, seeing their entire mission, the message of the attack at risk of failure, acts impulsively. And dangerously.
He races to the train, throws a smoke bomb to scatter the crowd, and he manages to disarm the massive bomb just seconds before the detonation signal is overridden. He narrowly escapes a blast that would have been devastating.
The boys realize they are no longer the only child prodigies operating in Tokyo.
And the identity of this new adversary, the force capable of countering 9's brilliant technology, is revealed to be 5, a former colleague from the very same hidden lab.
Now, returning to Tokyo, and clearly equipped with equal, if not superior, resources, the game just became deeply personal and infinitely more dangerous.
Right. So, part 3, uncovering the origin story, Project Athena.
A lot of it all.
With the appearance of 5, the stakes are just ratcheted up. You now have this terrifying dynamic between the 3 surviving children of this experiment. And meanwhile, Shibazaki, who is now fully reinstated and backed by Kurehashi,
It's getting closer.
He's getting closer to the source of Sphinx's motivation. He stops looking at the riddles, and he starts looking at the victims of the bombings.
And that's the key investigator shift. The victims weren't random figures at all. They were all connected, however tenuously, to a mysterious organization called the Peace Renaissance Academy.
And by tracing those administrative links, Shibazaki finally discovers the code name for the deep, dark government secret he's been chasing his whole career.
Project Athena.
He manages to track down a man named Oki, a former administrator of the project. And Oki, who's been burdened by years of silence, and recognizing that the boys are determined to expose the truth.
He decides to confess everything. He's seeking a final, terrible absolution.
And this is the moment, this is the major aha, that recontextualizes every explosion, every riddle, every single act of violence we've seen so far.
The revelation of Project Athena is, to put it simply, a government-sanctioned crime against humanity.
Project Athena, named, with this staggering, unbelievable irony after the Greek goddess of wisdom and strategy, was a clandestine program. It was initiated by the Japanese military and certain government factions about 10 years prior.
And their goal was audacious, desperate, and just ethically monstrous. They wanted to manufacture synthetic savant syndrome.
They were seeking a new form of power. After years of post-war stagnation and restricted military development, the government decided to bypass traditional arms races. They wanted to create human beings with superhuman abilities.
Lightning-fast mental calculation, perfect memory, immense creative skills, all as a non-conventional means to rebuild and assert Japan's global dominance. They wanted genius on demand.
And how did they try to achieve this genius?
The subjects. The subjects were 26 orphaned children aged between 3 and 5 years old. They were sourced from various institutions, places where they would not be missed.
They were stripped of their names, identified only by numbers 9, 12, 5, and the 23 others, and housed in this secretive, isolated facility known chillingly as the settlement.
The experimentation was brutal. These toddlers were injected with a potent, experimental, and extremely hazardous drug that was secretly developed by a Japanese pharmaceutical company.
And the drug was designed to artificially control, enhance, and accelerate brain function, specifically to trigger the abilities associated with savant syndrome.
It raises this profound ethical question that the source material keeps coming back to. How could a modern government, even under the guise of national interest, justify sacrificing the well-being and future of 26 vulnerable children?
It speaks to a dark, hidden desperation for power, at any cost.
And the cost was catastrophic. While the drug did, in some cases, achieve its goal of creating hyperintelligence in some subjects, it was inherently destructive to the developing human body.
The sources confirmed that the vast majority, 24 of the 26 children, died slow, agonizing deaths from neurological deterioration and physical collapse.
9 and 12 were the rare survivors. They lasted just long enough to escape the facility, fleeing the trauma by setting the lab on fire to destroy the evidence of their escape.
But their survival was only a temporary reprieve. They, too, are suffering from the irreversible systemic effects of that drug. They are destined for short, painful, and intensely compressed lives.
And this truth, that they are dying victims and not calculated murderers, is the absolute core of Sphinx's motivation. Their entire terror campaign was never intended to cause mass death.
It was a performance.
A theatrical, high-stakes, violent public performance designed to force the world to acknowledge the crimes committed against them and the 24 children who died nameless and alone.
So the explosions, the fear, the sophisticated riddles, these were just the instruments they used, the instruments provided by the very superhuman intellect the government sought to create.
It's the ultimate poignant paradox. Their genius, which was stolen from them, is now being used as the weapon to expose the government's sin. They succeeded in spite of their captors, not because of them.
And knowing all of this, we can now look back at part 1 and 2 and see that every attack was calibrated, wasn't it? The use of thermite was about targeting infrastructure and displaying genius.
The choice of the police station was symbolic punishment. The riddles were designed to reveal a deep-seated cultural sickness. They wanted the world to see the monstrous injustice before they succumbed to the experiment themselves.
Which brings us to part 4, 5's betrayal and the nuclear showdown.
And this is where the personal tragedy deepens considerably. 5 returns. She survived Project Athena, but she was separated from 9 and 12 7 years prior. And her story involves this immediate entanglement with international power structures.
Her path is unique and so complex. After American intelligence exerted pressure on the Japanese government, forcing the shutdown of Project Athena.
5 was taken by a specialized U.S. agency, the Intelligence Support Activity, or IC. She arrives in Tokyo allied with American handlers, primarily a man named Clarence from the FBI CIA, and she's ostensibly there for counterterrorism.
But the source material makes it very clear that the American government's primary immediate objective is not justice for the victims.
No, it's retrieval of the stolen asset. 5 confirms she knows everything. The stolen material isn't just plutonium. It is the highly sensitive, clandestine Japanese atomic bomb prototype. It's a geopolitical nightmare if it remains loose.
And psychologically, Five's motivation is just fascinating. She sees this whole situation as a hyper-intellectual game.
It's driven by this pathological superiority and, a wounded attachment. She is immensely resentful that 9 and 12 escaped and seemingly left her behind.
So she's determined to capture them, to punish them, to force them back into this triangular orbit where she dictates all the rules.
Her pursuit of them is this twisted, destructive form of affection. It's not traditional malice.
She uses her unique position and her access to technology to counter their plans, which we saw with the jamming in part 2. But now, she takes the initiative.
She posts a new riddle, one specifically designed as a trap, and she leverages their established pattern of preventing mass casualties. Julius Caesar went to Arabia. Where did he go?
The answer, which you solve with a Caesar cipher, leads to the Haneda International Airport. And this kicks off a brilliant, high-tension confrontation, a pure intellectual duel between the 3 survivors.
9 and 12 are forced to confront 5 at the airport, which 5 has effectively transformed into a giant chessboard.
She operates from the control room, right?
Right.
Monitoring the feed from nearly 1,500 surveillance cameras, manipulating the flow of people and security assets like pieces on a grid.
They need an unforeseen variable to beat her. And 12, seeing the extreme danger of 5's setup, convinces 9 to use Lisa Sphinx 3.
Who the Americans in 5 don't fully track or understand. They just see her as this peripheral victim.
Right. So Lisa creates this desperate, high-stakes diversion. She triggers smoke bombs, a fake emergency that creates a crucial 5-minute window of chaos.
And this allows 9 and 12 to execute a complex architectural maneuver through the airport's blind spots. They narrowly escape the net 5 had cast.
But 5 is never truly defeated. She swiftly realizes Lisa's involvement, the emotional weak link, and she captures her. She rigs her with explosives.
This is her ultimate cruel move in this personal game. It's designed to break the fundamental bond between 9 and 12.
She reveals her full knowledge of the prototype and issues the ultimatum, the exact location of the bomb in exchange for Lisa's life.
And 12, faced with Lisa's imminent mortal danger, breaks his loyalty to 9 and their shared trauma. He reveals the bomb is hidden in a specific school.
The consequences of that choice are just devastating. 9, the strategist, had anticipated this possibility. He'd already moved the bomb, ensuring the government would only find a decoy.
But the emotional betrayal, the perceived breakdown of their singular trauma-forged bond in favor of a third party, it was profound. Their exclusivity, born of shared suffering, was just irrevocably damaged.
So the narrative just accelerates toward the final confrontation. 9 realizes he's lost control of the mission's psychological dimension, but the core objective remains: exposure.
And he decides the time for game
Surrenders. He demands a national press conference scheduled for 8:00 p.m. to reveal the full truth behind their actions and the atrocities of Project Athena.
But 5, enraged that 9 would surrender and thus deny her the chance to capture and control him, intercepts the police convoy transporting him.
And this leads to a high-speed, chaotic shootout. Her American handler, Clarence, realizing 5 has completely overstepped her orders, she's already killed a police driver, he attempts to arrest her.
5 is just completely consumed by her desperation and her superiority complex. She kills Clarence to eliminate the opposition and continue her personal chase.
She finally corners 9, but the encounter it's heartbreakingly intimate. It's not fueled by the cold rivalry of war, but by this twisted, profound affection born from their shared suffering.
And in a final exchange, she confirms that her actions were entirely for him, driven by her need to prove her worth and keep him in her orbit.
She asks him to live for them, meaning the 24 dead children and herself, and then in the ultimate act of self-destructive recognition, she sacrifices herself. She ignites her own car in a massive fiery explosion.
Her death secures 9's escape and just confirms the profound psychological destruction Project Athena inflicted on all 3 of them.
Which,
Securing the weapon that 12 revealed was hidden in a school, they deploy massive forces.
but they're still playing the wrong game. This is where 9 reveals his ultimate, meticulously planned strategy. His actual target was never the school, and it was never the ground.
He had prepared the atomic prototype for an atmospheric launch. He detonates the bomb, carried high by a parachute, and triggers a high-altitude nuclear explosion.
And for you, the listener, the key here is the mitigating detail. This action, which mirrors historical tests like Starfish Prime, does not cause widespread physical destruction or direct nuclear casualties on the ground.
Instead, the blast primarily generates a massive electromagnetic pulse, an EMP.
And that instantly causes a citywide blackout and infrastructural collapse.
Shibazaki, racing against the clock using his knowledge of nuclear physics and the boy's documented MO, realizes the truth in this moment. He confirms what he had long suspected.
That 9 and 12 were truly never killers. Their entire operation,
Sacrificing innocent human lives.
the city plunges into this profound darkness, but the sky is simultaneously lit by this terrifying yet beautiful, aurora-like atmospheric aftermath of the blast.
It's a visual metaphor, light born from destruction. The truth revealed through absolute chaos. They forced the world to look up and finally recognize their presence.
The boy finally giving them a symbolic memorial.
Shibazaki, having tracked them down, finally confronts them. And it's not as an arresting officer, is it? It's as a witness.
A witness, he promises to bring their story to light, to fulfill their ultimate goal of exposure and recognition.
But before that promise can be secured, the political and geopolitical forces they challenged. They intervene. The American forces, determined to recover the stolen asset and silence the perpetrators.
Before the full scope of Project Athena could compromise international relations, they descend on the facility.
And the tragedy just reaches its emotional peak. In the confrontation that follows, 12 is fatally shot by an American soldier.
9, completely shattered by the loss of his last remaining emotional anchor, raises a remote control for a nuclear power plant he rigged. He threatens total annihilation if the soldiers don't stand down.
This final threat is just a desperate, absolute assertion of control and trauma.
And it works. The American forces retreat momentarily, realizing the catastrophic cost of outright aggression. And 9, knowing his message has been broadcast worldwide through the EMP and the government's forced reaction, eventually surrenders.
The mission is accomplished. The world now has the details of Project Athena, and the source material confirms the heartbreaking outcome. Both boys pass away shortly after.
The lingering, irreversible neurological effects of the drug administered to them as children finally claim them. Their lives were tragically brief, but intensely purposeful. They forced a buried government truth into the light of day.
They succeeded in creating a legacy, not of terror, but of devastating revelation. Their actions ensure that their forgotten lives, and the lives of the other 24 children, can't be swept back under the rug of political expediency.
And finally, the last most poignant piece of the puzzle. The meaning behind those 3 cryptic letters left at the very beginning. V-O-N.
Shibazaki continues his investigation. He meets with Lisa, now a fellow survivor, and she reveals a final piece of information. 9 always listened to music from a cold country, Iceland.
Connecting the Icelandic clue back to those first 3 letters, V-O-N, provides the final heartbreaking context for their entire campaign. In Icelandic, von means hope.
The ultimate heartbreaking contrast. Their violence, their destruction, their terror campaign, it was all fundamentally an expression of a desperate hope.
Hope for justice, hope for remembrance, and hope that their short, stolen lives would count for something in the end. They named their movement after the very thing their captors tried to destroy in them.
So this deep dive took us on an incredible, complex journey. We started with what the world perceived as sophisticated terrorists using weapons of mass destruction.
And we ended with 2 dying victims seeking recognition for a massive government crime.
The attacks were a brilliant, tragic performance designed to expose Project Athena. Their genius intellect, artificially developed and fatally flawed, was the very mechanism they used to force the world to listen without taking innocent lives.
Their most powerful weapon wasn't the bomb or the thermite or the EMP. It was the unassailable truth that they held.
The central conflict was between that superhuman intellect and their crushed humanity. They were given the cognitive tools to change the world, but were only left with enough time and motivation to expose the horrors that created them.
Forcing the state to choose between admitting its crimes or facing global panic.
And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to carry forward with you. 9 and 12 were driven by this overwhelming primal need for the world to remember that they lived.
Given that their actions exposed a massive, deep-seated government conspiracy, but cost them their own lives and the lives of those tragically tied to them like Five and Clarence, was their violent theatrical approach the only way for their voices, and the voices of the 24 other children, to finally be heard.
What does it fundamentally say about a society that will only pay attention to a moral atrocity when it is threatened by the spectacle of